Hey everyone, Walthany Nuttano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a sweaty review of the new Ghost record, Meliora.
What are you doing to me with these album titles over here?
Ghost is a Swedish rock and metal band, and this is their third full-length LP. And they're actually one of the most hyped and I think elaborate bands to come out of metal music in a while, not just because of their really fantastic stage show that they put on when they play live, which I have had the pleasure to see, but also because of their sound. If you listen to a Ghost record, you're most likely going to get some pretty awesome, very melodic, well-written, and very strong song-backed metal music with a bit of an old school flavor, something that sounds like it's coming out of like the late 60s or the 70s. And especially on their debut LP, while there were some cheesy moments on this album, again, it was just too fantastically written and catchy to just outright dismiss it. That was until their sophomore record, which just really did not measure up, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many other people as well. It was a bit of a polarizing release for the band. And I respect this album as a big moment for Ghost. I mean, along with this record came a big US tour, an endorsement from none other than Dave Grohl, as well as just a larger production sound and recording. But the band's instrumentation on this record just started to sound like sanitized to death, to the point where just there was no grit left in Ghost's sound. The eeriness and the danger that was there on the debut was no longer on this record. Not that the first album is super duper dangerous. I mean, it's very theatrical, it's very campy, but I think the camp really just kind of took over in a really unrewarding way on the sophomore record. And the vocals didn't really do it for me on this album either, and I think some of Ghost's most subpar songs landed on this project. But I think maybe this could be partially due to the fact that the band was switching singers around this time. From what I understand, they are on their third Papa Emeritus. Is the band constantly switching out one singer after another? Is this merely just some kind of weird costume change so that Ghost can continue to build up just the mystery around the band? I truly and honestly have no idea. All I know is that the vocals on the sophomore record were just a little weird and nasal, in my opinion. Just everything that I liked about Ghost on their debut just turned slightly sour on this record. So of course, on this latest full-length LP from Ghost, they are trying once again to bring a larger instrumental presentation while simultaneously bringing good songs. And by Jove, I think they've done it. Everyone is cringing right now, cringing so hard. The harmonized guitar leads. There's a moment on this record where harp pops in. The huge choral vocals on this record, as well as the booming drums and the keyboards and the acoustic guitar when it does pop up, all sound gorgeous. They all come together and they layer in this wonderful way. They are glistening in this very punchy mix. I would actually say there are numerous moments on this album that I would say Ghost's instrumental arrangements are actually really elegant and detailed, and again, just really well assembled. And the drums and the rhythm guitars on here actually have the kind of punch that I wanted to hear on the sophomore record. They have a bit more bite. Yeah, this record is very cleanly produced. It is very, it's definitely not a mechanical album. It's not a rigid album, but you know, the guitars definitely sound a little ensnared. They're not wild or anything like that. They are very steady. They keep the rhythm. They keep the tempo on this album. There isn't anything, you know, super aggressive about Ghost on this album, but they are bringing well-written songs with good sounds and good mixes. And I'm liking the vocals once again on this record too. The new Papa, very melodic, very eerie, and stylistically, Ghost continues to pull from that old school of rock and metal music, and I think they diversify their influences a little bit. They're not only just pulling from thrash and just older bands like Blue Oyster Cult or something like that. I think there's a little bit of classical music worked into here. There's also a bit of heavy psych worked into here, and what sounds like a bit of just old school pop rock as well as progressive rock too. Overall, this album just sounds really cinematic, how it shifts from one musical style and idea to the next, while it continues to just bring these lush, heavy, massive instrumental presentations. And to sort of show the diversity of this record, you might even want to jump to the song He Is while you're listening to this LP. It kicks off with this little acoustic interlude, and it's a very tender moment on the record, but it eventually just kicks up a notch into this very grand, epic, hulking ballad. There are moments of the song that are like pure King Crimson, pure Pink Floyd, and yes. And not only does Ghost show this dynamic range from track to track on this LP, but they show this range within single songs as well. Just like the opening track here, Spirit, which is easily one of the most dynamic songs they've ever written. Really huge crescendos on this track. I love how the song ends. The ascending instrumental passages in the second half of this track are killer and just some of the most elaborate stuff Ghost has ever delivered thus far, and I think they just really executed it really well. And the way the track kicks off with some nice driving rhythm guitars and these kind of Crypt Keeper synths that sort of set the tone right at the beginning of the track, it's just a well-assembled tune. And we transition from this track into a moment from the pinnacle to the pit where Ghost gets grimy right from the get-go with this distorted bass line that continues throughout much of the track. And I love the very resonant, the ringing guitar lead that calls out over this bass line. Just like some really sinister shit. In some respects, it sounds like this track, the song on this track, could have landed on Ghost's debut record, which might be disappointing for some people who are going into this album looking for something totally new from Ghost. And I don't really think this album provides that. It doesn't really provide a huge change of pace as much as it shows Ghost very effectively fine-tuning the sound that made us so excited in 2010. On this record, I felt like I was still getting the same Ghost that I got 5 years ago, but this time the song structures and the writing are just longer, they're more elaborate, they're more ambitious. On top of that, I'm getting just more instrumentation, heavier production. It's kind of the record that I wish the sophomore album had been, but it doesn't always work out that way. Regardless though, I love how the second half of this track sounds totally different from the first, another testament to Ghost's songwriting on this record. And I also love some of the transitions on the song CIRICE, from the riff on this track to the glistening pianos that we kind of get on the pre-chorus a little bit. And then maybe around like the 3:30-minute mark of the track, the way that all the instrumentation goes silent, and then you get that lone vocal, and then all of a sudden all the instrumentation busts into this it just blossoms, it explodes into this melodic, beautiful rock and metal, it's almost operatic in a sense, presentation. I just love that transition, just so many good transitions on this album. Transition, once again. There are a few other cuts in the track listing here that actually read to me like 2010 Ghost, but again, just on a bigger, cooler, awesomer, more exciting, grander scale, like the song Mummy Dust, which is maybe one of the dorkiest songs in the track listing here in terms of the lyrics, but I still love the track, and I love the guitar riff on this cut as well, especially the tone on this guitar riff. Reminds me of something like off an Anthrax record, and I love how Ghost continues to blatantly reference these thrash metal riffs and these thrash metal bands, but work these riffs and work these ideas into such beautiful and creepy songs. Even the start of the song Absolution is, to me reminiscent of like some Metallica For Whom the Bell Tolls intro shit. The song Majesty as well is kind of another throwback for me for Ghost. It just kind of reminds me of like an older song from them, although maybe it's not too advanced, far past what Ghost was doing all the way back then. And it's not like a low point for me on the record, but it is a moment where I'm just kind of like, I mean, you could have tried harder to make this bigger. Still, even on this track and many other cuts here, Ghost just hits the nail on the head one time after another. It just sounds like they were very well aware of the mixed reception of the last record, and they pretty much overcame every hump and smoothed out every wrinkle from that past experience and just brought us a fresh, awesome, well-prepared sound. On the lyrical end of things, I'm enjoying this record too. I think Ghost continues to be very blasphemous as well as devilish and poetic. And this closing track, even though I don't really like some of the theatrical riffs on this song, I still kind of enjoy Ghost's camp, especially how you kind of hear this metronome ticking away in the midst of the silence between these huge thunderous drums and guitars and keys. I like those little extra sounds and bits of sound play that Ghost works in to not only create good songs, but, you know, just like some really creepy, vivid, strange, occult imagery that surrounds these songs as well. So this was a really enjoyable record for me. This was a really exciting record for me because I feel like Ghost was finally able to create that sonic, that musical world that they look like they come from on stage. It wasn't quite fully realized on their debut, but the songs were great. So, you know, it's not really a huge detriment to that record that it doesn't have a fully formed aesthetic around it. But I think on this record, we get great songs and we get that style. We get that strong sense of style. I think Ghost really does come into their own on this record and provide us with, again, that musical world that we imagine them coming from. And they've fully formed it, they've fully created it, and they've allowed us to come into it. I think up until this point, this world that they present on this record was just an idea. And now this world exists. It's actually here, and the representation of it is this album. I'm feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this thing. Transition, have you given this record a listen? If you have, what do you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Ghost, really good fucking album, oh my god, forever.